So Mr. Jeffrey A. George began working with sea turtles in 1992 as a volunteer for Sea Turtle Incorporated after retiring from the position of General Superintendent, Product Planning and Inventory Management with Wheeling Pittsburgh Steel Corporation. In 1995, he began managing the organization after the failing health of Isla Letcher. In 2000, he became the organization's first paid employee as curator, and in 2012 was named executive director. Since 1995, the organization has grown 100-fold under his leadership. Sea Turtle Inc. now supports 9 full-time employees, 4 part-time employees, and 8 seasonal employees while financially supporting sea turtle conservation programs in Mexico and other countries. In addition, Sea Turtle Inc. finances and Mr. George manages the South Texas Nest Conservation Program to detect and protect Kemp's Ridley nesting activity on South Padre Island and Boca Chica beaches. Mr. George learned the science of nest conservation while volunteering at the nesting camps in Tamaulipas, Mexico, and learned rehabilitation, triage, and treatment from veterinarians at the Gladys Porter Zoo. He now holds scientific, rehabilitation, and zoological permits for endangered sea turtles from Texas Parks and Wildlife. Sea Turtle Inc. also holds a federal endangered species permit under his supervision from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. He serves as a stakeholder contributing to the Kemp's Ridley recovery team. And a fun fact about Jeff. He is a former Texas State champion sand sculptor. Yeah, I know. In case you're wondering, the winning sculpture was not a sea turtle, and hopefully he'll tell us what his winning sculpture was. Did you want to use this one?
Whatever you want.
This is this one. And this is your one. Is it more comfortable with this
If you're, yeah, sure. And which is the...
That's the red button.
Okay. All right. Does anybody want to stand up for 10 seconds? Yeah. All right, do it. Let's go. 9, 8, 7... All right, you got blood back in your feet. So, first of all, good afternoon. Second, a little bit of housekeeping here. Thank you very much, Chris, for inviting me, and I hopefully you enjoyed parts or all of the presentations, the lunch. So please be sure to thank our sponsors before you leave. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you. The second thing is to thank all the real scientists here. Many of you I have learned a lot from over 25 years, and I want to say to those of you in the room, thank you very much. The third bit of housekeeping is to say that Chris called me and said, we want you to speak at this conference. And I said, okay, tell me a little bit more. And she said, well, these are scientists presenting their peer-reviewed research. Silence, right? And I said, might as well bring in a pile of sand and I'll teach them how to build a sandcastle. Because I don't have peer-reviewed science. And she said, no, we want you to talk about, how do we keep this from echoing? We want you to talk about converting and translating this to the general public. I said, oh, I got you there, I can do that. Okay. So the fourth bit of housekeeping is to the real scientists, don't cringe, because we're going to do cliff notes on your real science, and I know that you spent many, many hours, days, months, years on your research. And so the focus today of my talk is how do we translate your science and give it to John Doe, who's a farmer from Iowa. And so there's a sign at the amphitheater at Sea Turtle Inc., painted by a young lady back there, and it's the thrust of my talk this afternoon. It says, in the end, we will conserve only what we love, we will love only what we understand, and we will understand only what we've been taught. Many of the scientists in this room get federal funding, get funding from universities, get funding from NGOs. And so to drive that funding, we've got to make sure that all involved understand, love, and want to conserve, right? So what's the platform to do this with the general public? And that platform happens to have begun with that little lady who Patrick mentioned, Isla Letcher, one of the early pioneers in the 60s, who formed Sea Turtle Inc. now 40 years ago. We are celebrating our 40th anniversary. And so she paraded turtles on Johnny Carson and David Letterman, and became, so to speak, a voice.
If you stand away from that other microphone, I think it'll be better.
Thank you.
And maybe.
See, I told you I'm not a scientist or an electronic geek. And so, hey, that worked, Dan. Good job. You're hired. So she became unofficially a voice for sea turtles to the national audience, a voice certainly for the Kemp's Ridley here in Texas. So that platform becomes now Sea Turtle Inc. And so the mission, of course, many of you know, many of your volunteers, is rehabilitation, growing. Dr. Tom back here and Dr. Deb taking great care of our turtles, now vet tech staff. Conservation, as Chris mentioned, under Donna's leadership, we're doing the southernmost 50 miles of Texas, and nest conservation. We're also funding nest conservation in other countries, and education. So education then becomes that platform for creating stewardship. So there's different ways to do that. Our little facility, we've outgrown it. We're now seeing 150,000 visitors a year. There are cranes moving, dirt flying for our $4.5 million expansion. It will be done in January, so we're getting close, and it's going to triple our capacity for handling sea turtles, triple our capacity for handling visitors. So that's that much more environmental stewardship we can create through our little presentations there. And so social media is another way. Tiffany started years ago, and then Megan, and now San Juana, our marketing staff, our social media footprint, 111,000 likes on our Facebook page. So this becomes a very powerful tool for reaching people that don't necessarily visit the Sea Turtle Inc. facility. Another platform now, technology. How about virtual field trips? We're now doing 100 a year, and that's going to grow. It's probably going to double every year. We can do them in English and in Espanol. So we're trying to now reach the private schools and the larger schools in Mexico to take our turtles right into the classrooms, creating awareness, stewardship. How about television? This is Bob Phillips, Texas Country Reporter, and Discovery, and the Today Show. And so media is another way to get the word out there on a large-scale basis. And so to create awareness, stewardship, we want to share our passion and your science, right? So that's the thrust and the niche of Sea Turtle Inc. So why do we care? Why do we need to do this? Well, as I mentioned, some of you probably get funding because of the awareness created. And so it's vital to the recovery of endangered species. And what's written below there with all its typos, I just lifted it. This is one of the earlier Kemp's Ridley recovery plans. Many of the scientists on that recovery team are here today who talk about education, and this is important, particularly with the children and this industry people and the fishing industry. So it's documented that it's important. So what are we teaching from your science? So what are we making cliff notes on and presenting to that farmer from Iowa or that school teacher from Dallas? Well, we give them a little bit of history. here's why, what happened to sea turtles, why they're endangered species. There's the Aribara film for the Kemp's Ridley, and 99% of its nesting is in Tamaulipas, Mexico, and 1%. But look, there was also poaching going on, and we've got this historical documentation. And here's David. Hi, you're out there. Dave Owens is watching, I think, on the cloud out there. This is one of his photographs from Mexico, 1964, he tells me, and these are all olive Ridley shells that turtles that have been slaughtered, right, for the meat, and the eggs, and leather, and oil. And so the very graphic image that we hear a lot of gasps when you show this to the general public, but it gives them an idea of what was going on. And of course, the large percentage of these were nesting females, right? Because they're most vulnerable, laying on our beaches. And we can talk about the United States. We've got lots of documentation about the turtle crawls and the slaughterhouses in Florida in the 40s, 50s, 60s. And you can still visit this place. It's a historical museum now, but we can show them all the large adult green sea turtles going off to be slaughtered for turtle soup, right? So we want to bring them home. Hey guys, this is not somebody else's country. This is an international effort and was an international problem. And then we talk about the Kemp's Ridley and the life cycle. Hey, they're born in Tamaulipas, and then they go offshore for a few years, and a lot of those are in Florida and upper coast of the Gulf. And then the mamas come back to where they were born, and oh my goodness, you look how bad it was. From that Aribara film, look how low it got, 300-400 turtles. But then look at all the good news. And then look, we're going exponential, 15-18%, 2009, woohoo, we're celebrating, 2010, uh-oh. And then it recovers, and then uh-oh again. And I'm very curious about things, so I don't tell people anything and I say, okay, there's some science out there that says, a lot of our females, and this is probably the wrong picture to pull out of Dr. Shaver's paper, but a large percentage of those females go up to the upper Gulf Coast, Louisiana, to get fat, and then the remigration, generally 2 years, maybe that's changing. And then, so they're born, they go offshore, they grow up, they come back, females go up there to get fat, most of the males stay put. All of this is your science that we've made cliff notes out. We're standing there talking to the public. And then I ask them, write down on a piece of paper. These are nesting females. Write down on your piece of paper what happened in 2010 that you think may have affected this number, right? This dip. And so they've heard about those females in Louisiana, and they've heard about the life cycle, and they write on their piece of paper. All right, here's what we get. 3 main answers. Some of these people are pretty sharp. 6% say it was a very bad winter. Wow, that's pretty good. Didn't we hear that this morning? Hey. 42% say deep horizon oil spill. But do you know that 52% say Hurricane Katrina? Hurricane Katrina was 2005. Right? So everything, all those Midwestern farmers and those school teachers in Houston, not Houston, but everything gets cloudy, right? Everything's getting cloudy. And so what better way to bring them back to your science, reality, what's going on, than to remind them, oh, well, I'm not going to make fun of you, but Katrina was actually 05, and the oil spill was 10, and yes, we did have a bad winter. So we don't have the definitive answers. You don't have the definitive answers. But public perception is getting very cloudy now, 6 years after the oil spill. I can tell you that much. All right? And people say, well, how do you know the turtles were in the oil? Well, there's Kim and Donna's research about stable isotope. And yeah, there's 50% of the turtles surveyed or sampled have that oil signature in their stable isotope. So that's a one-sentence summary of this very important paper given to John Q. Public. And then we talk about funding. Hey, you remember the lawsuits? Oh yeah, whatever happened to that money? Well, big pocket of it is going to be spent now for chemistry recovery, sea turtle research, sea turtle science. And so we tell them, they learn that conservation programs, science, law, politics, all play a role and did play a role in this, and it's relieved tax money. And they're like, oh yeah, cool, thanks, we like that. And so, you know, we talk about marine sanctuaries where we have no fishing zones now, and Tamaulipas has made a sanctuary here of this major nesting beach, and so they're very excited, and so we leave them with a very positive note. That look at Tony's picture here, 7,000 turtles in one day. And they say, wow, we were at 300, and they're like, yeah, that's good. We talk to them about your research on hypothermia. And Donna just published a paper about cold stunning, right? Some of you have been through it. And so what's going on here? These are green turtles in the Laguna Madre, important foraging and developmental habitat for greens. And so they're learning about cold stunning and climate change. There's Donna's paper. And powerful impact? Absolutely. You know, 1,000, 2,000 people there watching us release cold stun turtles in the midst of February or whenever that was. And boy, it's a lasting impression. We have people come back 3 years later, 2 years later, 4 years later saying, when are you going to release all those hundreds of turtles? Well, hopefully never again, but that's not going to happen. So they learn. Fibropapilloma. This is new, of course, in Texas, but there's been research going on for 30 years about what's causing these tumors, how is the virus transferred from turtle to turtle, does it kill the turtle, is it a cancer, is it oil related? They all want to know, and they're learning. There's some papers, Brian Stacy, of course. We have surgical laser. Dr. Tom is now surgically removing these with a laser which cuts and cauterizes. We have the therapy laser. So they're learning about the medical aspects of sea turtle recovery. Climate change. This is out of the most recent chemistry recovery plan. And we're citing Thane's very important temperature data and talking about how when you move a nest you get more females. That's probably a good thing. But I think Thane, I don't know if he's published it yet, but he's reporting what a 1 degree Celsius rise over 20 years, where on average our beaches have gotten hotter. And so we're talking about how that may affect the recovery of an endangered species. We show them the data logger that are going in our nests and all these nests to record this information and how important it is that we have these so we know if there's actually climate change. We know what percentage of females we are getting or what approximate percent of females. So they're learning about that. Marine debris, boy, there's a big one. The beach cleanup in conjunction with this and our NOAA grant on Saturday on South Padre, and we just did a news thing for Channel 23, which is our NBC affiliate, talking about come out, clean our beaches, let's get them ready for mama turtles. This is a little post-hatchling that washed in. You can see what, 5 inches long, and she passed that red balloon. We're seeing more and more and more of this. And so it's our own information, our own little research with our turtles that we can pass on. And this is from a paper where Blair Witherington researched and said the third most common item found in the gut of sea turtles associated with sargassum. That's the first 2-3 year life cycle where they're out there floating. Third most was synthetic, especially plastics. So lots of turtles getting lots of plastics. And our own pictures. The turtle on top was a turtle we had that passed a produce bag, right out of our grocery store. And balloons, boy, we preach and preach and preach about balloons. Here's a paper going way back, Pam and Tony Amos, about ingestion of plastics and marine debris that we can cite. Here's our South Padre Island bag ban ordinance that was passed a number of years ago, and you see down here it talks about entanglement, ingestion of marine debris, plastic consumption, kills animals, exhaustion, infection. And so here's public policy that is enacted because of awareness, education, stewardship. Entanglement, we're seeing more and more and more, trying to analyze the percentage of turtles. On the bottom right is that seismic gear that was left in the Laguna Madre. We kept seeing big turtles entangled, and Dr. Tom had to do amputations, and then Liana back here was involved, and Andreas about, hey, let's get Parks and Wildlife involved and the GLO involved, because we're seeing more and more of this in our lagoon that was abandoned. And even our shrimp fleets. We talk, some of us, about turtle excluder devices, and we've got one hanging there, although Tony cringes because he says it's at the back, it's at a wrong angle. That's a, what was it? Not a traffic violation, but a murder. At least it's there. We'll work on getting the right angle, okay, Tony? So, this was a paper done by Amy Leslie out of WWF, and she looked at shrimp consumption in the European Union, and nearly 50% of the shrimp there is wild caught, but it comes from India, Bangladesh, Vietnam, Indonesia, countries that do not use turtle excluder devices. And the #1 consumers, the UK, Germany, France, Belgium. So our visitors are international, our visitors visit these countries, and maybe they'll make a choice about, hey, I'm going to skip the shrimp while I'm in the UK. I'll wait till I get back to that good old Texas shrimp. And so these can have an effect on the public. So what good does it do? Yeah, it's nice to give them all this information, but are they really going to do anything with it? Well, yeah, it does, because now people are carrying more of their own bags and not taking the grocery bag. People are not doing balloon releases. Brownsville Beautification just reprinted Up and Away Not, a little cartoon coloring book about not releasing balloons, going out to the children here in Brownsville. Our farmers, maybe they're going to have a buffer zone. Maybe they're not going to use so much fertilizer. Fishing line, people are taking it in their pockets. Anti-litter campaigns, beach cleanups. It does drive public policy. Their beach raking has changed because of your science and telling people, hey, you can't rake that beach during nesting season, or you can't construct during nesting season, or you got to wait till it starts composting. Bag bans, marine sanctuaries. And in general, it supports endangered species protection. It drives funding, some of your funding. It drives science, conservation, land acquisition. And to us, that $4.5 million expansion, it drove a family in Dallas to donate $1.3 million. So that's a financial decision made because of creating stewardship. And so it also creates future generations of scientists and research. There's a student there who's doing research this year with Dr. Shaver, and there's another one over here, and another one over here, and we've got 8 of them sitting back at Sea Turtle Inc. Who are driven now by learning from your science.